Okay, we are live.
Episode 4.
Backward
Fantastic.
Hat Guys.
Yeah, I know. Which hat are you sporting?
Got Saturn's rings, man.
Fantastic. I'm doing a little back pocket support.
Ooh.
I think, last episode I did the Nolan Rockers Phonetic Opinion hat, which was also a great hat. Shout out Nolan for going full time on Opinion.
Yeah,
which is really
That's
exciting.
huge.
Yeah. So we are going to be talking hashtags this week. A lot to cover in the world of hashtags. I just posted on LinkedIn that we'd kind of be covering a bunch of different platforms. Some things we'll have to show, some things we'll just be talking about. But let's jump right into it. Jordan, if you could put my screen up, I would like to start with Instagram hashtags. And I think Instagram sort of is the best case study when you talk about hashtags across all social media platforms. Obviously, there's different strategies used for LinkedIn. I've covered that a little bit on LinkedIn. For TikTok, Twitter, like all these platforms kind of have hashtags used in a different way. And I suppose we'll talk about that. But I think Instagram sort of encompasses all of that in the best way. So you can see here on my screen, you can search hashtags on Instagram, which is kind of an interesting feature. And you can actually even follow hashtags, which is a really interesting feature, especially when you consider yourself as a content creator, how you can get your post to show up in more people's feed that aren't following you, but are maybe following a hashtag. So of course, being the 5-star football guy, the first hashtag I searched is football. And you can kind of see here as you're searching hashtags, how many posts are on each hashtag, which is probably the first and most important metric that you want to be paying attention to when you're thinking about using hashtags. I suppose we'd even talk about reasons for using hashtags. Jordan, I'll let you speak after I explain. But for me, hashtags on Instagram or LinkedIn just serve as ways for people to follow you who are interested in a topic, but don't know that you exist necessarily. So on Instagram, they do a really good job at showing the back-end metrics and how many people see you from hashtags, which is really interesting. They don't necessarily show you which hashtags do well for you. You'll have to use some third-party services for that. But for me, it serves a purpose to get in front of people that I know would be interested in my content, but that don't necessarily know I exist. And Jordan, I don't know if you have a different take on that.
No, I'm pretty much the exact same. It's basically to get in front of more people who don't know I exist, just like you said.
Yeah.
I use them. I used to not use them as much, with my personal Instagram, but now I have been, just because I've been posting more of my work stuff there. But it gets you in front of more people, and I have seen like follows from it just because I know people search those hashtags and they'll just scroll through the photos, like everything. But yes, same reasons that I use them.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have this perception, especially on Instagram, on Twitter, that hashtags are dead and nobody really uses hashtags. But these platforms have pretty quietly put in some really interesting features, like you see on Instagram, where you can follow hashtags.
Right.
On Twitter, they do a really good job at grouping hashtags into sort of those Twitter moments, or like the news that's happening on Twitter, which is a really powerful way to group different interest groups or different things that are happening. And on LinkedIn, it's a little bit more broken, where if you trend in a certain hashtag, then different things happen for you there. And we can talk about that later.
Right.
But that perception that hashtags are dead isn't necessarily true. I mean, maybe in past algorithms, they were a little bit more beefed up and gave you some more permissions and some more reach, but there's still a lot of use for hashtags right now. And I sort of suppose as I go on, I can dispel some myths I've heard of hashtags, because I've heard quite a few. But to talk about hashtags, like thinking about what hashtags you want to use, because you shouldn't just be whipping on any hashtags. There are smart ways to use hashtags. And for 5-star, you want to use hashtags for anybody, and for any post that you have, you want to use hashtags that are obviously relevant to the audience you want to reach, and that will get you in front of more people that are in that audience that you don't necessarily that you're not in front of yet. So for 5-star football, you'd think that maybe just hashtagging football would be a really good thing to do. Or even maybe you think you're a little smarter and you hashtag NFL. You can see that up here, the NFL has over 16 million posts on the hashtag. Football had over 67 million posts. And of course, you have to take into account other connotations. So football on the internet actually pretty widely means soccer. It doesn't actually mean football like NFL football. So those are different things you have to take into, take into account as well. But these hashtags are not going to be as effective for you as hashtags that reach a more niche audience. And you can't see here, unfortunately, in the desktop view, but on the mobile view, where most people use Instagram, when you're scrolling through hashtags, there's a top 9 posts. So if people are searching hashtags, you could show up in that top 9 and be more have more reach from those. And then there are recent posts as well. And on the desktop version, they just lump you all together. But again, people might be following hashtags, different stuff like that. So NFL, football, those might be good hashtags to cast a really wide net, but they're probably not going to have a great effect on people coming back and following your page. Maybe they'll see it, but odds are it's not the right person seeing it. So the nice part about Instagram, as you can see up here, they actually have related hashtags for ones that other people use here. So these are all look like pretty recent posts right now. And you can see that they put their hashtags in their comments, and they do hashtag explore and explore page and double tap and general stuff like that. Those probably aren't super effective for them, but they do have similar hashtags, and you can start looking at hashtags that people are using, or even ones that Instagram recommends themselves. So an interesting one here might be wide receiver. If you're looking for football players in specific, wide receiver definitely has a smaller, there you go, under 200,000 posts, which is much more in the area of where you want to be looking rather than that 1 million plus. And my rule of thumb is anywhere like 200,000 might even be a lot. The closer you can get to like 30,000, 50,000, while still obviously having relevant keywords, you don't want to be searching something so obscure that people probably are never going to be searching. But even things like NFL draft, probably going to have a little bit more, almost 1 million, but that's still niche down far more than just NFL. So it's important. Maybe you want to do popular players. So Lamar Jackson, he's probably not going to have as many. You look under 80,000. So you can kind of see the more that you niche down, the better it's going to get. And yet a lot of these posts are about Lamar Jackson, but also a lot of them are just kind of football general. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to play around with it and look at what other people are doing and look at what Instagram is recommending you. But having such nuanced keywords are still going to serve you probably a lot better than having something like NFL or football or whatever broad topic you're talking about.
Right. Ty, how important, or how often, I should say, do you switch up your hashtags? Are you using them same hashtags every single 5-star post, or are you switching it up every single time?
That's a really good segue into some misconceptions. So for a while,
Right.
I was under the impression that you're right. You had to switch up your hashtags. There is something to be said about if you're using the same hashtags in the post. So like you can see here, when I post something on 5-star, I just include it all below my caption. So it's kind of below the fold, as it were. You have to click see more to even see these. I was under the impression that the algorithm was going to pick that up as being like, okay, this is kind of spammy, it's kind of body, that they're putting the same thing in the same caption. However, it really doesn't work out that way. I did a bit of A/B testing where I had 3 sets of hashtags that I was basically rotating every third post. And I didn't see any change in my hashtag performance versus, having the 30 hashtags there versus having 15 hashtags on 3 different posts or something like that. So to answer your question, I don't rotate them. I kind of found a good set of hashtags. I'm actually in the middle right now of A/B testing even more specific hashtags. So for a while, I was still using and it's still pretty recently too, I was using pretty, generic hashtags even still, and stuff that probably didn't do that well, like hashtag baseball. I just kind of blindly copy and pasted a set of hashtags without thinking about it. And it did serve me well for a while. But these hashtag baseballs, even hashtag college football, hashtag American football, like those are all still really general hashtags. And it doesn't really serve what I'm trying to do, which you can see here are football, meme, and highlight. So I wanted to get even more specific to those. And actually, Declan Brown of the Back Pocket Podcast talked about when they hashtag their post, they try to get as close to those meme style hashtags as possible, because those are the ones that people are following a lot of the time. So if you have something even within that comedy realm, people are probably more inclined to follow a meme hashtag because there's going to be a lot of relevant, funny stuff that pops up over something like hashtag quarterback or something like that. So I've been testing these new hashtags that are a little bit more specific. You can see here, NFL memes, NFL rumors. There was a sport meme page, sports memes, like all that sort of stuff. Trying to get just really more specific and targeted with the audiences that I'm trying to reach out to. But that was a very long-winded answer to your question of, I don't rotate my hashtags. I try to find a good set and maybe narrow them down as time goes on, but you don't really have to worry about rotating them all that much.
Love it. Let's talk about, you mentioned the meme hashtags.
Yeah.
So when that Star Wars video I posted, I keep this keeps coming back, but it's been like a weird, just like funny thing that happened to me. When I posted that, Andrew reached out to me and said, "Hey, I just hashtagged it was like, I can't remember the exact hashtag. It was something about like dank memes, something. And he's like, watch, you'll get like a bunch more views now. And he's like, because this hashtag, like everyone just engages with each other's posts through this hashtag. It's like this weird community. And as soon as he did that, like the views just started going up, and I was getting like random follows. And it's the weirdest thing, like you just mentioned, with the, if you get the right, for some reason it's the meme hashtag, but it works. And it's like that whole different community of engagement that you get with just one hashtag.
And another good trick is to kind of go to the hashtag and see if it even looks like the content that you're posting. So a lot of this content for 5-star looks a lot like the stuff I'm already posting. So just anecdotally, you could know that if somebody follows this hashtag and your post shows up in this hashtag, they're probably going to be more inclined to follow you. Whereas I'm sure if I go to Sit Catch or something like that, like not a lot of this stuff really looks like the meme style format that I'm posting. So it's like, you kind of have to see for yourself, like, is this, you have to take yourself out of the body of the person posting and put it into somebody that's just going to be stumbling across. And I often, this is going to sound a little patronizing, but kind of lower your like level of intelligence, and not even to say that the people that are following you are dumber, but they're just paying way less attention to what you're posting than what you are. So if they can't really quickly relate sports memes to your page, or if they can't quickly connect the two, then you're done for. They're not going to spend more than 5 seconds, probably 5 seconds max, on looking at your stuff. So I think it's important to also consider it from that point of view.
Awesome. So I just want to touch on, this is news to you, Ty, probably, but I run a Star Wars fan page.
Very much news to me.
Yep. And I've been using the same exact hashtags for probably 4 months, just on every single post, daily post. And I've seen like, growth close to 2,500 followers in just 3 months, just from using the same hashtags and getting reach from that. Yeah.
No, it's huge. And I would say that hashtags aren't always going to, I think the misconception that people have, to come back to it, is maybe 3 years ago on Instagram or wherever that you're using hashtags. Instagram, like I said, is probably the best case study, that using hashtags would almost guarantee you more impressions and more stuff like that. Right now, as Instagram stands, that's not the case. Like, you're not going to be guaranteed more impressions by using hashtags, but it does raise the ceiling of impressions you get. So when I look through different analytics, there will be posts that have gotten me hundreds of thousands of views based on hashtags, and there'll be posts that get hundreds of thousands of views, and none of those are based off hashtags. So it's like, it's not going to guarantee anything, and people might say that as, okay, why would I even use it? But it really is going to raise your ceiling of reach for your content.
For sure. Can we segue into like LinkedIn hashtags? Because I just pulled up, I've actually read about it in the past, about, they say you can only, or you should only use like 4 hashtags or something like that. And if you use anything more, they're just like almost non-existent, like they don't work.
Right.
Have you heard anything along those lines?
Yeah, I saw 3. And actually, part of one of my posts, because I did a post a couple weeks ago about hashtags, and as I pulled that up, part of that post was only using 3, and that came right from the LinkedIn VP of product development. But it does make sense if you think about it. Like, if you're, and LinkedIn kind of can have this connotation that it can be really spammy, and people are tagging a bunch of people and using a bunch of hashtags. And I'm sure they're not trying to make their platform be like that. They don't want their platform to be full of that spam. So they're going to limit hashtags. And 3 is probably the ideal amount. You can probably get away with more. Like I've had posts trend and they had 6 hashtags on them or something like that. But having 30 hashtags on a LinkedIn post isn't going to work like it does on Instagram or anything else like that. So it definitely is important to limit your hashtags. But same thing on LinkedIn. It's important to be like really specific with the hashtags that you're using. And it's also really important. The same thing I just did with Instagram, where I looked how many people were following the hashtag and how many people were engaging with it, and if it looked like your content. It's super important to do that on LinkedIn too, and then make sure that you're getting in front of the right people.
And a little off topic, not really, but in terms of using hashtags that are, in the same category per se, I've, seen misconceptions that if you're going to use hashtags, they all have to be within, a football category or a Star Wars category. But I've had posts where it's like a behind the scenes, and I'll hashtag everything to do with cameras, and then I'll throw in hashtags to do with the products, and I don't see any difference in engagement or how well the post performs. Have you heard anything along the lines of hashtag categories and they all have to be related to one another?
No, and I think that kind of comes back to my point about even using them in the first place. I think there's just this weird balance, and it's this whole thing of social media. Like, it's not an art, or it's not a science. It's definitely more of an art, and there's strategies that you can use, but using more hashtags is probably going to raise the ceiling of people that you can reach. But at the same time, using a really broad and wide set of hashtags isn't going to necessarily get you in front of the exact right people, if that makes any sense. So it's going to cast a wider net, but at the same time, you might not want to be catching everything that it brings in, because if you're hashtagging random things in a product post, it might reach those people, but they might not even be interested in what you're talking about, which I suppose isn't a bad thing. It's not like you're paying for ads or anything, and then you're getting in front of disengaged audiences. But there is that point where, like, you could be getting in front of better people, right? Because on every platform, you're limited in how many hashtags you can use. Like on Instagram, it's 30. LinkedIn, you have a character limit, so you couldn't even do unlimited hashtags if you wanted to. And so you could just be using those hashtags to reach a better subset of people.
Perfect. You mentioned at the beginning, it's kind of funny to see how, hashtags are used differently on every platform. For example, like Twitter, if, there's some event or news going on, like I am looking and scrolling and refreshing through that hashtag just to see live updates.
Yeah.
But, there's no way I'm doing that on Instagram.
Right. It's much more of like a grouping of news almost.
Exactly. It's weird changes like that. I mean, if you're able to utilize and kind of perfect how you're using those hashtags per platform, I think that's really where you can see some engagement and growth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, the difference between platforms. And
yeah, I think that's really smart. Like you said, on Instagram or on Twitter, the easy example is last night there was some rioting in Minnesota, and the hashtag like Lake Street or Minneapolis Riot 2020 was trending, and I was just refreshing it to see new pictures and news and videos and stuff like that. And you're completely right. You don't do that on any other platform's hashtags. So you have to understand the basis of why you're using it. Like I rarely use hashtags on Twitter unless I'm trying to sort of participate in a broader conversation. Whereas on the other platforms, like we were just talking about, it's way more a way to game the algorithm and to expand your reach in just like a shotgun way. On Twitter, it's much more of a rifle pinpointed shot, or on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok or whatever, some of the other platforms, it's just a shotgun. Like, let's just see how many people we can hit with this. And if it lands, it lands. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
For sure. Another thing I think is important too, just in general, and I do this on Instagram quite a bit, is I'll actually go into a specific hashtag and just start engaging with posts.
Yeah.
So, for example, I go to Sony Alpha a lot, the hashtag. It's basically the camera that I use, the Sony A7 III. It's a Sony Alpha series.
Yep.
And that's a hashtag that's pretty popular among, those photographers and filmmakers. So I'll go in there and just start engaging with people. And I've gotten, followers and engagement just from doing that. And I think that's another great way to utilize hashtags.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really smart. And you're right. Like, and maybe I'm curious to know if you've done that at all with this Star Wars page that you run. I mean, talk about.
I haven't.
That's right up my alley. But like for trying to like grow and expand, and even in LinkedIn or like on other platforms where you are trying to build an engaged base, like that's a really great way to do it. And I think those are the platforms to sort of do it on.
For sure. And yeah, like I said, I've just done it on Instagram. I'm trying to think. I haven't really done it anywhere else, but it's another, a piece of advice from Gary Vee. He said, whatever, search an Instagram hashtag, leave your 2 cents, and then see what happens. But it's that same concept. And I try to do it every so often just to see what I can get out of it. I should do it more because honestly, when I do it, it's, I get good results, but it's kind of time consuming.
Yeah. It definitely is.
But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I don't know. Do you have anything else? I think we covered a lot.
We did. I don't have anything else off the top of my head.
Okay. I mean, do you want to walk through it all, this Star Wars page, and like any way that you've grown it, or just anything off the top of your head, like, what are some strategies that you've been using? Because I do think hashtags are really effective as I think about like growing pages and all this sort of stuff. Like hashtags are a great way to get in front of a really wide audience right away. So it might be interesting from somebody who is like just starting, if that has been true, or what different strategies you've used.
I for sure would say hashtags is probably the main thing. Other than that, and you can speak to this too with 5-star, it's, posting consistently, like staying in front of the people, having a consistent, I guess, the types of posts that you're doing and the types of copy that you're putting under the posts, and, are you that funny guy or that serious person? Are you spitting the facts, or are you a hater of, the Star Wars community, whatever it may be. But I think that's really important. But overall, honestly, I would say from what I've seen in the insights of the post, it's been the hashtags, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I think especially early on, those hashtags are going to be really big, just because, and I'm assuming you're running it on Instagram.
Yes.
Just because on Instagram, you sort of have to reach, unfortunately, like a certain threshold of like 2,000 to 3,000 followers to have a chance to rank on the Explore page. And the Explore page even has become a lot more curated. Like before, it was really just meant for viral pieces of content, and now it's curated viral pieces of content. So viral in like a Star Wars niche might mean something different than viral in a football niche, or viral in a beauty niche, or something like that. But you still really don't have a great chance at ranking on that Explore page until you have a certain amount of followers. So like early on, like 0 to 2,500, hashtags are going to be your primary source of reach, and hashtags are going to help you sort of accrue that base level audience. And that's such an important audience to build early on, is like an engaged set, not like a bunch of bots and people that just follow back anybody.
For sure.
Like it's a really important to have an engaged set of audience members, because they're going to be the ones that dictate how you're able to rank going forward. Like if they're engaging with your content a lot, if they're really active on your page, they're going to be able to propel you to the Explore page, and then to that momentous growth that everybody's looking for. But it's important to even attract them in the first place, and hashtags are where you do that.
That's such a good point, because, I feel like that those first however many followers that you get, that, I mean, they're going to basically make or break how much engagement you're going to get for the next, couple years.
Yeah.
And that's why I hate when people buy followers.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work, because they're not going to engage. They're not going to, be in it. It's fake people. It's bots.
Yeah.
And that's why when, companies buy followers and likes, their social media pages don't perform that well, just because their organic reach goes down, and the engagement they're getting are only from the people who, quite honestly, are directly within the company.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't work, because that first, round of followers is crucial, just like you said.
It is true. It's absolutely critical. And just from like an algorithmic standpoint, it's really important that those are the people that are engaged. And like LinkedIn weighs that. They weigh sort of your actions. Like they can see how many people you follow and follow. They can see how many people you like. They can see if you have a third-party extension hooked up, and if it's violating its terms of service, and it'll knock you in the algorithm. I mean, you basically have like a goodness score in the eyes of Instagram, and doing all of those things early on, like you just talked about, really knocks that score, and then really lowers the ceiling of the potential reach that you can have early on. And there are ways to come back from it. People talk about shadow banning all the time, and you just kind of have to ride those waves out. And even on 5-star, where I don't really think I've ever been shadow banned. Sometimes I think that I have a couple times for maybe content that I posted or something like that, because I'm big enough where I don't have to do any of those skeezy sort of strategies. But you just have to sort of wade through those lower times of organic reach and engagement. And all these platforms are always teetering with their algorithm anyway. So it could be the fact that maybe you did some sus strategies before and they're knocking you for it, or it could just be that they're tinkering their algorithm and what worked before just doesn't work anymore. But I totally agree with your point of like those early followers really, really matter. And hashtags, quite honestly, are the way you're going to reach them.
For sure. Speaking of like tweaking the algorithm, I honestly have don't even know close to an answer to this, but like, how often is that happening? How often are platforms just completely switching it up to see if people can figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, it's never a complete switch up. Like if there is a switch up, you're probably going to see something about it. You know, like I would say a complete switch up would be Instagram going from a timeline to like a curated algorithm, right? Like how Instagram used to be chronological and now it's not.
Right.
Like that would be a switch up. But there's minor tweaks all the time, like how they rank certain engagement metrics. As they introduce new ways to engage with posts, all of a sudden those can be ranked differently. So like the DM feature, like being able to send people posts is a huge deal. And that's a really important way for people to be able to engage with posts, or being able to add an Instagram post to a story. Like that all of a sudden matters now. So as they add new features, they sort of rank things differently. And I can guarantee you that they're in the back end sort of ranking it, sort of like retooling it at like doing little tweaks every single time, tightening something here, loosening something there. But I always tell people that you can understand what direction they're going. It's not like they're trying to, it's always so funny to me that people always think that the algorithm is like combatant against them. If that were the case, if Instagram was trying to purposely make an algorithm that didn't serve you, they wouldn't have anybody use their platform. So you have to understand what they're trying to do to know where they're trying to go. And if you can know where they're trying to go, then you can start curating your own solutions to whatever changes they're making. So I always talk about, like, on social media platforms, they're just trying to keep users on the platform as long as possible. So if you can understand that very basic fact that they're trying to keep users on their platform for as long as possible so that they can serve them more ads and they themselves can make more money, then just start doing things that will keep people on the platform longer, whether it be, and you can see this with Instagram, they put on IGTV so there's longer form content, or they are boosting carousel posts so that people are scrolling through more and different stuff like that. And so you just have to make sure that you're curating your content, which of course is really easy to say and hard to do, that you're curating your content to keep people on the platform as long as possible. And there's like a million things that you can do to help do that. I remember when I sort of started to understand this better on 5-star, I was trying to make group chats with different users. So like there was sort of like an inner circle of like my top tier followers that were following me and that I was engaging with in DMs, because I knew that if I was engaging with them in DMs longer, that was going to favor me in the algorithm. Or when I started using carousel posts, I knew that, you know, if I could put more pictures onto one post and people were scrolling through it more and more, that was going to serve me in the algorithm. Or by putting stories and polls on stories, having people engage with those and be looking through those, like all these sorts of things you do because you understand that these platforms have one goal, which is to keep people on the platform longer. And you just got to play into that game.
Dude, that's such a great point. And that's, I mean, people forget that that's a selling point for a lot of people nowadays, is how good or bad, you know, an algorithm is, because, you know, that's why a lot of people have joined TikTok, because the organic reach is off the charts right now.
Right.
LinkedIn organic reach is off the charts due to the algorithm. So a lot of people are posting more, spending more time on those platforms, and it's another selling point.
And it's so funny to see these people start to figure it out on TikTok. Like you'll see these videos where you have to pause the video really quickly, and if you can't pause it, it means you kind of have to like export it and then like do it, like scrub through it, or they're like, you know, watch it, or they're like, did you watch this video
rewatching
again? Yes, and they are understanding, whether they really know it like at a direct level or not, that rewatches and shares and like all this sort of stuff affects how the video does in the algorithm. And I think it's so funny, like being on TikTok, like I was on TikTok January of 2019 and seeing it evolve from just like dancing videos to people like really fundamentally understanding what the algorithm does and how it can serve them is so funny. And I think it is just such a cool like evolution, especially for somebody like me who's just super into that sort of stuff.
For sure. And again, I think we could, and I want to spend a whole episode just talking about TikTok, because it's funny. It's funny to me. It's unique. It's a tool that I think people should be utilizing.
Right.
At least trying to utilize. I mean, you don't have to just dance in front of the screen. That's not what the app is for anymore. So,
no,
but
you're
it's
totally right.
It's super interesting, and I think it's something we can dive into deeper.
Yes, I agree. We will definitely have to spend an entire episode on that. But I mean, other than that, I don't think I have anything else. We kind of got off on a bit of a tangent, but we always do, and I think it always turns out for the best.
Yep.
So I'm excited that we do that.
I agree. All right, man.
I think we're good to go.
That's a wrap, I think.
Well, thank you
for episode 4.
episode 4. Thank you for everybody that watched. Man, we're always like on the half an hour mark. We're like robots. We're so good at this thing.
We're dialed.
Yeah. Thank you for everybody that's watching. Make sure to go follow us on Instagram. We haven't posted anything there yet, but maybe we will someday. And YouTube, if you want to watch this episode, because we do a lot of visuals and stuff that might be helpful to watch. So thank you, everybody. We'll come back next week, talk about something, maybe TikTok, maybe something else. We always have something to talk about. But thank you, Jordan. Thank you for everybody.
Yep. Thanks.